everybody, it's Mel. Thank you so much for joining me today as I talk about all of the books that I read throughout the month of March. So March went a little bit off the rails for me, and most of the books that I intended to read that I put on my Roll of Reads TBR I didn't quite manage to get to. However, I did read a few books. Quite a lot of those I could still put into the prompts to say that I managed to read those prompts for Roll of Reads. For those of you that don't know, throughout the month of March I ran a readathon called Roll of Reads based on my previous TBR game. I will link the announcement video and any other video that I have made, both from this year and last year, down below so you can go and check that out. It will be running every year in March, so if you'd like to join next year, that would be absolutely amazing. But anyway, yeah, things didn't kind of go according to plan. This is down to the fact that one of our cats got very sick in the middle of the month and was diagnosed with diabetes, which was a lot to take in and a big learning curve of things that we now need to do. And I was feeling very stressed, so I didn't quite manage to read those books. Didn't read very much in the middle of the month, and then I picked up a comfort read and that kind of led me down a different path. But anyway, that's okay. I will talk you through all the books that I read throughout the month of March. Also, I'll just say as well that all of the stats, so amount of books read, amount of pages, star rating, average star rating, all that stuff, is going to be in the video that should go up next, which is the video where I talk through my stats and also go through my diversity game and see how we're going for the year. So if you would like to see the stats and watch that game, check out my next video. Anyway, the first two books that I read in the month of March, I'm going to talk to you about together because they're part of the same series, and they are Ninth House and Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. This is the first and this is the second. This is a direct continuation with the series. I'll talk a little bit about this one in a moment, but I am going to mostly talk about this for the actual plot line and what's going on, because obviously the other one will involve a bit more spoilers. In this book, we follow Alex Stern, and Alex is able to see and interact with ghosts. This is a ability that not many people in the world actually have. Alex has had this ability since she was a very young child, and she hasn't entirely known what it means, and she hasn't really been able to control it. She also hasn't had the greatest of experiences as a result of this. Not all of her interactions have been particularly friendly or smooth, and yeah, it hasn't been a great time for her. I will also say, if you have not read this book, or Hellbent obviously, please do check out trigger warnings before you do so. There are a lot of really, really hard hitting, really difficult subject matter in these two books, and if you are someone that gets quite triggered by things like drug and alcohol abuse, sexual and physical assault, parental and child dysfunctional relationships, anything like that, then I definitely highly recommend that you, just bear that in mind, basically. So anyway, Alex has this ability, and if you can hear all this scrabbling, my watch is making reflections on the wall, and Pistachio is in here with me, and she loves chasing reflections, so she's chasing the reflections of the watch. So that's, if you can hear that, that's what that is. But yes, so Alex finds out that the occult is real. She obviously knows about ghosts, and she discovers that there is an organization who are essentially in charge of monitoring and, I guess, overseeing a bunch of different sorority and fraternity houses at Yale University who use the occult and who dabble in the occult. The ninth house is Leith's house, and this is the organization that does the monitoring, and they end up recruiting Alex to be a person that is going to help monitor because she can see ghosts, and so it's reasonably easy for her to kind of do the role. And she is initiated into Leigh, and then she's enrolled at Yale University, and she becomes the kind of apprentice to the person who is currently running Leigh's house, which is Darlington. This is also a murder mystery. I really enjoyed this book. I gave both of them actually 4.5 stars. I believe that the first time I read this one, so this was a reread for me, I believe that I gave it 5 stars. I'm not 100% sure what it was that made me drop the star, to be perfectly honest with you, but I did really enjoy it. I love the way that Leigh Bardugo wrote style. I think she has a fantastic way of creating characters. I thought the mystery worked really well in here as well, but I do think that it was the paranormal activity and characterization of Alex which was the most interesting. When I first read this one, I actually thought that this was a standalone, and I remember finding out that there was going to be a second book and not really thinking it needed one. Then I read it again and realized that I don't know what I was thinking then, because it's very clearly needs another book or several books. So don't know what was going on there. But anyway, that's Ninth House. Then we have Hellbent. So this continues the story. Obviously there are other things going on that don't happen in this first one. It is not so much a murder mystery as it is a bit more of a story about demons, and yeah, continuing with the paranormal and the occult. Someone is trapped in hell and we're trying to get them back from hell, but we also learn more about the occult world and Leigh's house in general. Really enjoyed this one as well. Like I said, I gave it 4.5 stars also. I really still loved the character of Alex. I really liked the fact that you got a glimpse into a couple of other characters. You got more information about a couple of other characters who I thought were really well done and really enjoyed. So there was Turner, and I'm not sure if she's Mercy or Marcy or Macy, but something like that. And those two characters were fleshed out a lot more. They appeared in Ninth House, but they were given a bigger role, and I really enjoyed that as well. But yeah, that is Ninth House and Hellbent. Sorry, I just needed to slightly change the angle because, as you can see, the sun is setting, and yeah, it was too much sun, so I'm trying to make it slightly less of an issue. Anyway, what was I talking about? Yes, so the next book that I finished was a book that I actually started, I think, in December. I read this one via audio, and as you may know, I am not a huge audiobook reader. That is why it took me a long time to read this one, and that is Loveless by Alice Oseman. So this is a young adult contemporary. This book is about Georgia and her two best friends from high school, Jason and Pip, are going to university. They've moved away from home and they're going to university for the first time, and it's about Georgia trying to kind of discover who she is and what she wants out of life. She's always been a person that really loved rom-coms, really enjoyed watching romantic movies. She is looking for her own kind of romantic experience, but it's about her discovering that actually maybe that is not something that she particularly wants, and ultimately figuring out that she is a romantic and asexual. And yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I thought that it was incredibly well written. I have loved everything that I've read from Alice Oseman. I think that they are absolutely fantastic at writing teenage characters, at exploring what it is like to be trying to figure out who you are, you know, what you want from your life, what your sexuality is, all of those things that teenagers do try and discover. I mean, I feel like we all try and discover these things throughout our lives, but it's particularly something that as a teenager, young adult, you are very much in the middle of trying to figure out, and I think Alice Oseman really writes that exploration and that storyline incredibly well, and that is something that I definitely think was the same for Loveless. I personally am a straight cis woman, so this experience is not one that I have had, so it's not something that I can talk about from the point of view of how realistic it was, but it felt very authentic and very realistic from my limited experience. But from the point of view of being someone who was a teenager, who went through the growing pains of finding yourself and being a teenager and moving out of home and all of those other things that are happening in addition to figuring out her sexuality. I definitely feel like it was very authentic and incredibly well written and incredibly well explored. I also found that it was really, really interesting for me as a cis straight woman to find out about something that isn't really, or hasn't been until probably fairly recently, really discussed and really explored within the kind of wider society. And I found that really, really interesting and actually really helpful as a teacher in particular, but just as a person trying to live in the world and understand and empathize with people. It was really great to be able to read a book that shows this experience that realistically everybody has, where they're trying to figure out who they are and what they want in their sexuality and all of those things, but trying to figure out how to be something that really isn't talked about, that really isn't acknowledged, that is seen as very different as the other. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was fantastic. I then also read I Was Born for This, also by Alice Oseman. This one I actually read partly via audio and partly physically or by ebook, and so it took me only a few days rather than a few months. This one we follow two different characters and I cannot remember their names, I apologize, but we follow two different characters. One is, I think she's in like 16 or 17 and she is a fan of this boy band, and one is a member of the boy band. And we swap backwards and forwards between these two different perspectives, and it's really about a small section of time, I think it's like 4 days, where things are getting discovered and picked up by the media and getting talked about, and somehow the fan ends up being in a position to really help this other character who's in the band when he is having quite a difficult time. I'm not going to go into any more details about the plot because spoilers. Another salient detail is that the boy band member is a trans boy, and yeah, this was another book that I thought really explored the idea of finding yourself and finding out what you want, who you are, how you feel about the world, all of that sort of thing in a really authentic and really well-written way. The thing that I will say is that I think this was Alice Oseman's second or third book, and they were very young when they were writing. I think they wrote Solitaire, their first book, when they were 16 or 17. So I don't think that this is based on any actual knowledge of the music industry or what it's like to be in the spotlight in the same way that maybe if they were writing now, they might have a bit more of an idea. Not that I do either, obviously, but yeah, that's the only thing that I'm not certain about in terms of how authentically it was written, but it definitely felt very authentic. I probably liked this one the least out of all of the Alice Oseman books that I've read, which I think at this point is all of them. I still really enjoyed it, but I definitely feel like it was the weaker of the books. I'm not sure if that was to do with the swapping of the perspectives, which is not something I've seen them do in other books before, or what it was, but yeah. I didn't think it was quite as strong, but I still really enjoyed it. I still find it a lot of fun. I still find it really interesting, and yeah, I do think they're an incredible author. For ratings, for Loveless, I gave it 4.5 stars, which in Core is 8.57. And for I Was Born for This, that was 3.5 stars, which in Core is 6.86. Next up we have Riviera Gold by Laurie. So this is the book that kind of was the one, I actually started it before I started I Was Born for This, but I finished I Was Born for This first. This is the one that kind of led me quite far away from my original TBR because, like I said, we had a stressful situation happening and I just needed a comfort read. So although this is a book that I had not read before, it is the 16th book in a series, which is this one here, which is one of my favourite series of all time. It is the Mary Russell series by Laurie. So in this series, we follow Mary Russell, who in the first book was a 16-year-old girl when she literally ran into Sherlock Holmes, who was a 60-year-old retired detective, or was he retired? He saw something in Mary Russell that he thought she was incredibly intelligent and thoughtful and observant, and he decided to unofficially apprentice her as his apprentice to be a detective and train her. This is now 16 books later, so she's quite a bit older than that, but her association with Sherlock Holmes has continued, and although she has her own career and her own studies, she is still continuing to be an amazing detective in her own right. So this book takes place in Monte Carlo on the Riviera. Yes, it is Monte Carlo on the Mediterranean. Russell and Holmes are trying to figure out what's happened with their old housekeeper, whether or not she is in fact a murderer, and also there's other mysteries going on as well. I love Laurie King's writing style. She really writes Mary Russell as an incredibly intelligent, feisty and independent woman, and I absolutely love Mary as a character. She's probably one of my favourite characters. And yeah, I love the way that Laurie King writes Mary to express herself, as in the way she has the character express herself, because it is first person perspective. This was really fun being set in Monte Carlo, which is not somewhere I know very much about, in the 1925. So, you know, it's the jazz age. It's something I don't know really very much about at all, which is something I really appreciate learning about as well. So definitely had a lot of fun with this one. And yeah, like I said, I just love her writing style, and so it feels like very much a comfort read because it's something that I really, really enjoy and am used to. This was the highest scoring book. In Core rating, I gave this a 9.29. That gives me a 5-star rating. The last book that I'm going to talk to you about today is Strike the Zither by Joan. This is a young adult fantasy. This is the first in a trilogy, I believe, and it is based on Chinese mythology and history and literature. And we follow a young woman called Zither. Zither is a strategist for one of the many armies in this particular empire who are fighting it out to kind of take control of the empire and see who essentially ends up coming up on top. And Zither has pledged herself as the strategist for Ren, I'm pretty sure is the person. It doesn't say, but I'm pretty sure it's Ren. She makes quite a difficult decision about how she's going to go about being an amazing strategist and making decisions about what she is going to do in order to further Ren's claim to the throne and her ability to win the battle. But there's a lot more going on than this. Halfway through, there's a really big reveal that I definitely didn't see coming. I'm not going to tell you because obviously spoilers, but I thought that it was really, really interesting and really well done, and I really enjoyed that particular reveal and how it affected the rest of the story. I did like the story. I thought it was really well written. I didn't particularly actually like the main character, but I enjoyed the way that she was characterized. I gave this one a 3.5 stars, and in Core that was 6.71. Now the main thing that kind of let it down a little bit was the pacing for me. I just found it to be a little bit too fast-paced. I like to have my fantasy have a little bit more time spent on characterization and world building. Having said that though, this is young adult, and typically I think young adult does tend to lend itself more towards the quicker paced fantasies, and so for the intended age category, I do think that that would probably work really well, but for me personally, I just found it was a little bit too fast and there was a little bit too much happening in a very short space of time, which meant that it was a bit more difficult to really sink myself into this incredible fantasy world and really learn about the characters, which let it down, unfortunately, a little bit. But I did really enjoy it. I thought it was a lot of fun. 3.5 stars is still a good book that I liked and I would recommend, and I'm definitely going to continue with the series. So those were all the books that I read in the month of March. Like I said, I really went off the rails with what my TBR was supposed to be. So the roles that I actually got for my Roll of Reads TBR was, for my first role, I landed on a mood read and I was going to choose Ninth House or Hellbent, so I did both of those. Second role, I was going to continue a series and I did not read the book that I was supposed to read for that, which was Reaper at the Gates, but I did continue the Mary Russell series, so I think that will still count. Then the next one, I was going to read a book that features music because I got a bard, and I did read I Was Born for This by Oseman, which features a boy band, so that was the book I said. Then I was going to read a book with a morally grey character because I got a thief, and for that I had said I was going to read Dark Harmony by Laura Thalassa, which I didn't read. Then I was going to read a translated book, which was going to be Cheese Sweet Home, which I did not read. Then I was going to read a book for a BIPOC author, which was the next prompt that I got, and I was going to read A Song of Race and Ruin by Roseanne A. Brown. I did not read that, but I did read Strike the Zither, which is by a BIPOC author, so that one works for that anyway. And then I got a cleric, and I needed to read a book featuring religion or mythology, and I was going to read Healer of the Water Monster, but I didn't read that one. But I think that I can say that Hellbent works for that because it talks about hell and demons and all of that sort of thing, so I think I'm counting it for that. But anyway, that's everything that I have to talk to you about today. Let me know how your March went. What did you read? Was there anything in particular you really enjoyed? Did you take part in Roll of Reads? Let me know how you went there. If you'd like to leave me a comment but you don't know what, then leave me a shrugging emoji because I didn't quite manage to fulfill my own readathon TBR. All of my social media details are listed in the description below, so if you'd like to go and follow me on any of those other platforms, please feel free to do so. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would absolutely love it if you would subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. And yeah, like I said, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.